My name is Munashe Sasha Dziva. I was born in Harare, Zimbabwe on the 28th of June, 1999. I grew up with two aunts and an uncle. I basically grew up without my parents. So my aunt was more of like a mother figure to me. My mom's always been in the UK ever since I was 3, 4. And yeah, I never knew my dad until I was 13, so yeah. And my dad's always been in Zimbabwe. My mom moved to the UK for a better life, I guess. I moved to Nottingham in 2019, and I moved here, well, to sort of like join my mom here, but also to study because I had tried to come here previously, but I never got visas, and like my visa was always getting denied. So obviously coming to uni was like just countering as coming to uni, and also like having this, 20-year reunion with my mom. So yeah, obviously back in growing up, obviously there wasn't like any video call, but obviously my mom used to send like pictures, and obviously she used to send stuff back home, so obviously I just knew my mom from like a picture, and obviously vague memories I had from being a child when she was still here, but obviously that was so long ago I couldn't really picture her. Maybe a silhouette, that's all I remember, but yeah. I was living in Zimbabwe with my aunt, and obviously they were more of like my family. Her husband became more of like my dad, and obviously their children became more of like my siblings. So it was painful in the way that I was leaving, this family that I had, but also I was excited because obviously I didn't know my mom. It was April of 2019. I think my journey to Nottingham was actually really funny. I went to like get like my obviously to the visa like center, right, to find out whether I've gotten my visa, because you won't know unless you physically go there and get your passport and you see that stamp in your passport. And I was so nervous. I was like, God, what if it's just gonna be like another what's going to be, like, what am I going to become? Because at that time, it was just so frustrating because, like, my friends were already starting to, like, move out of the country, and they were all going to different countries, and they were going to study and stuff like that, and I was just there stuck, and, I was just like, what if my visa gets denied? Like, I can't even, because up until, like, I started my I was just at home. I had finished my O-levels, I had finished my A-levels, and I was just there stuck doing nothing. Like literally I wasn't doing anything. And then, so it was just like, if this doesn't work out, I just don't know. So I went to like the visa center, and then I got my passport, and literally, I don't remember if I screamed, but I was definitely happy. And then, who did I call? I remember, who did I call first? I think because my uncle was going to get me, because he was coming to get me. I think he was the first person I don't know if I called my aunt first or if I called my uncle first to tell them that, you know what, this is finally happening, like I'm finally going and stuff like that. And then obviously, unfortunately my mom came last, even though I was coming. But like, it was that excitement because I think during that time, it was a time at home where we're just having family study and we're constantly praying. So obviously I was like, yeah, you know what we were praying for has finally been answered. It's like an answered prayer. So yeah, and then like literally, so I didn't have time to like say goodbye to people because I think I got my visa today. And then literally my mom bought like my ticket for like, I think it was a Friday when I got, I don't remember, was it a Friday when I got, and then I think Saturday, Sunday, I was already leaving. So I never got time to like say bye or like tell people that I'm like going. Obviously, I don't know if it's like African culture or like if it's just us as Zimbabweans or if it's just my family, but you're not supposed to tell people if you're like going anywhere or if you're like making plans to go overseas and stuff. So obviously I didn't tell people that I had applied to go to the UK. Obviously, you know, as a child, you tell your friends that, yeah, you know, I've applied and stuff like that. But like very few people knew that I had applied. So, and then the fact that I didn't have like a long time to like pack, to say goodbye to people. It was literally, okay, my visa's out in the next few days, you know, getting on the plane, I'm leaving. So yeah, it was also hard to like grasp. Like I was excited, but I was also like, it was just so hard to process because it all happened so fast. Like something that you've always wanted just literally come true, like a dream come true or whatever it was. Because yeah, like my visa, like we had tried from when I was young, and then I think we've tried maybe 4 or 5 times, and my visa was always denied. So like this was just this one last time when we were like, yeah, if this doesn't work, that is, I don't know. So it was such a big miracle, and yeah, life changing. Around the time that I was about to like come here, my phone was just suddenly stopped working. So, and then obviously there wasn't any like time to like get a new phone and stuff. So I was like, yeah, no, it's fine. I'm just gonna travel this 24-hour journey without a phone. So like here I am, like teenager in this like walk. I couldn't even get like a plain picture. Maybe it was just God guiding me. But then what happened, because obviously I took the plane from Zimbabwe to South Africa, and then like from South Africa I just started talking to like this man, and I think it was 3 women. I don't remember how many they were, and I don't even know how we started talking, but then they sort of like just adopted me for the moment, and then I sat with them like in the cafe because I think I was waiting for my next flight. It wasn't until like 5, like I had to wait for like 5 hours, and I think they had to wait for 4. So when we got to South Africa, I was like, yeah, can I please just borrow your phone? I need to like call the people back home in Zimbabwe to tell them, yeah, like I've arrived in South Africa, you know, and then I'll call them as soon as I get to the UK. So obviously, yeah, that was done, and obviously we said our goodbyes. So obviously from the plane from South Africa to Qatar, I was just a solo person, and from obviously Qatar to the UK, obviously my mom had like my flight details, so she knew what time I was arriving and stuff like that. But she was actually late to come and get me. So obviously I arrived, there's no one waiting for me. And then I don't know if it was a cleaner or a security guard, and then I was like, can you just please use your phone so that I can call my mom to come and get me? That was really bold of me, but anyway, yeah. So I asked for his phone, and then I called my mom. I was like, I have arrived. And then, yeah, she was like, will only be a few minutes and stuff. And then, yeah, they came to get me, and I saw my mom for the first time, and I don't know. Yeah, like I can't really explain the feeling, but I think I was just numb to it all because I didn't know whether I should cry, whether I should be happy, whether I should scream. It was just so weird. But I think for my mom, she was more excited because she was like, all right, this is my daughter. But then for me, it was just like, yeah, just, I don't know, like, yeah. My mom has always been active in my life, but it's just that there was the distance, obviously. So for her, she obviously prayed and prayed for this moment. And even though I've always wished to be with my mom, I obviously didn't understand why she had to leave and stuff. But I think one of the things she sort of like did when I got here was really, sit me down as an adult and then she obviously explained how life had been difficult for her and how she's, she'd tried everything to make ends meet, and, and obviously she had tried to get me here, but obviously the visas always got denied. So, yeah, so when it was more of like a breakthrough, like having me having her and vice versa. At first, it was really difficult because, even though like my mom used to call and would talk for hours, she used to send like stuff like all the time. She used to send money. Like my mom was she was there, but she wasn't there. So it was just now just trying to like process this physical relation. At first, it was hard because obviously, there's we can run away from the fact that we're mother and daughter, but obviously you have to learn someone's personality. You have to learn what someone is like. And yes, and I have two brothers here, so trying to to me, I just thought, well, our relationship is going to be like, my siblings but it was different because obviously they didn't grow up with me. They'd just be like, whoa, hold on, you just come from nowhere and you want to be our sister. And I was used to that. I was used to being appreciated as a sister, and just being like a big sister to my siblings. And then I'm coming here and then I'm just, I just have these two boys who don't really see the value in me being their sister, kind of like, it was like, and then it's like when they're being told to do something, they're like, how come Sasha doesn't get to like do that? And it's different because the upbringing here is so different from how we were brought up in Zimbabwe. So that was like something that I had to it was like relearning like everything that I was used to back home, because yeah, they are younger brothers. They're like 10 years younger than me, and they were born in Nottingham. So they're proper like British and, British bred. I'm just this African girl coming to live with them. And I'm trying to impose my African values on them, and they're like, no, we are not having that. So it was hard for me because, yeah, it was like, well, I kind of miss having my siblings because then they'll like appreciate that I'm a big sister, and if I tell them no, they're just gonna listen and I won't have to. And then they're like, yeah, no, how come you don't get to do what we do? And so it's like, yeah, I'm like, oh yeah, these spoiled brats, like you live it. I'm like, wait until you go to Africa, you're gonna see what it's like. Because as much as I don't like some of the upbringing we get to have as like Africans or as Zimbabweans, I think I'm really, really grateful to have been born, as a Zimbabwean, and to grow up in Zimbabwe, because I think there's just this beauty of being African. You're taught manners. You're not supposed to speak when, people are speaking. I mean, obviously, it's chill, but I think it's just so important. And you look back and the people, the children that are born here versus like back home, there is obviously now this generation is, I don't know what it's made of. I think everything is just the same in, wherever you are in the world because of technology and stuff. But when I was growing up, you had the chance to just be a child, and you have these values enforced in you, and you just grow up with them, and they just never go away. When you meet other people, you're supposed to do the clapping, makadi, and then for some you actually have to kneel down depending on like how old they are. And like even if when a visitor comes and it's time to give them food, if it's you kneel down, you wash their hands and stuff like that. That's just the culture. That's and then coming here, it's like, and this is actually funny because obviously in Zimbabwe, it's so taboo to know a teacher's first name. You could never call, you could basically never call anyone older by their first name. So if you are at school, it's Mr. Who, it's Miss Who. it's no matter how, whether they look young, they look old, it's always Mr. and Mrs. If it's like, I don't know, in university, they probably call professor with their last name. And then here it's like I'm just, shoulder to shoulder with Jane. I'm like, oh yeah, that was strange because we were used to like the Mr. and Mrs. and then coming here, everyone's just referred to as their first name, which was really hard for me because I really struggled with what to call my stepdad, because obviously like it's something that you process. Before I came here, I was like, do I call him dad? What do I call him? And then obviously my brothers literally just call him by his first name. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll just join the crowd. So I think that would have been a different situation if I was moving back to Zimbabwe. Now I'd had to, have like some kind of like respectful names, like call him maybe uncle, dad, or whatever the name was going to be like, because I think we really emphasize on on mannerism. And then in terms of like like language, obviously I do speak Shona with my mom at home, so that's been such a such a blessing, because then I can loosen my tongue a bit and stuff. But I think also back home, because my siblings then, they sort of like had that upbringing where they went to, probably because in Zimbabwe, it's more of like when you go to certain schools, you are not allowed to like converse in Shona unless you're like doing the Shona subject. So like sometimes when you walk around the school grounds and stuff like that, you're supposed to speak in English. So I think that has always been, ingrained in my mind, that obviously when you're in school, you probably like speak English. So with my siblings, sometimes we would still speak English at home, but not as much as here, because now I have to speak it 24/7 because my brothers can't speak Shona. But then obviously I've got my mom, so that's easy. We just speak Shona together. So like I think the Nottingham accent isn't really that deep, so you can, and obviously I do meet some people and then I'm like, yeah, what? And it's like I really don't get the accent. It's like, yeah, and then sometimes I just pretend that I've heard what they've said, but I really haven't. But in terms of like, communication barriers, there haven't been that much, because in Zimbabwe we are pretty much, English is pretty much our first language, depending on where you grow up, to be honest. So that has, and then it's so funny because when I met like some Zimbabweans who were like maybe born here, or like they came here when they were young, they're like, oh, how come your English is so good? I'm like, well, you're a Zimbabwean, you should know like that in Zimbabwe, obviously they grew up here, so they kind of have this narrative that, or maybe they see from their parents, because obviously like when the older generations of Zimbabweans who are here, they aren't as, they aren't as fluent in English as obviously the younger generation. So when someone comes from Zimbabwe, they expect them to like not be fluent in English or not be as good in English. But then Zimbabwe is literally an English-speaking country, and I've had so many questions about how come you speak close to good English, or how come you're so fluent. I'm like, English is like literally just any other. You speak it every other day, and so it's not that deep, really. So yeah. But then obviously if I meet other people outside of, Nottingham, maybe like Scottish people, or like, those, or Yorkshire people with thick accents, like, oh yeah, you've lost me. I can understand you sometimes. But yeah. This is actually funny because Sasha is actually not on my birth certificate, but it's just a name that they have just called me. They've just called me Sasha at home. So like at home, I'm literally Sasha. So because I'm so used to the name, I tell people that my name's Sasha, I think 80% of the time. But obviously at uni, obviously because Munashe is there on my documents and stuff, people like, so at uni and people like in like a professional setting, they know me as Munashe. But I've also been inclined, to tell people that my name is Sasha, or like just tell people to just call me Sasha anyway, because I just don't want to go through the labor of having to like, tell people how to pronounce my name. Me saying that I prefer to be called Sasha is not that I just prefer my white name. It's just because literally I have always been called Sasha. Well, not always, but I'm like Munashe is like my tribal name. I know if they call me Munashe, I know, oh wow, what have I done? I think for a long time I had romanticized what it was like, coming, all the way to the UK. And, when you see, the movies and stuff, like, it's always portrayed as this magical place. So I don't know. I just thought, wow, if I'm going to, it was the excitement to think, wow, I'm just going to, this, I don't know, nice place. But then when I got here, I was just like, oh, this is the UK. I mean, literally coming from the Midlands airport, you seeing the cool places. I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's just a country, like, there isn't really much to it, but I think obviously the tram sort of like caught my eye, because I was like, oh yeah, we don't have that in Zimbabwe, and obviously we were used to like commuter omnibuses and all that. So I was like, oh, this is a train, but it's not a train, so it's called a tram. Okay, got it. I think because it had a different name, and obviously because I think trains in Zimbabwe stopped running for years. So obviously I didn't really know what a train looked like, but obviously I knew that the train passes through a railway anyway. But obviously, like, seeing the tram was like, well, this is walking in the road, kind of, yeah. Nottingham is like, because obviously as compared to like other cities, it's like you have everything and nothing in Nottingham. Like you have everything that you could ever need, and it's more of like okay on its own. And then when you go to the other cities, like, oh, well, this is different. Like when you go to London, London is such a big city, and it's so hard to get by. Whereas Nottingham is just Nottingham. I can't put like words to it, but it's definitely different from other cities, because some other cities are like really take for your time. If you go to Derby is really quiet and there's nothing there. And then when you come to Nottingham, it's like I think there's room for everyone in Nottingham. If you want a quiet life in Nottingham, it can be achievable. If you want like that kind of like, fast-paced life in Nottingham, you can still get it. If you want the party life in Nottingham, you can still get it. And if you want, that kind of like creative life in Nottingham, you can get it as well. So I think it's like a diverse place, if you can say. I had to process a lot of things when I got to Nottingham. The fact that I had to like rekindle this, like have a physical relationship with my mom, and also I was starting college, and I had just this. I think before I left Zimbabwe, I was kind of like discovering myself, you would say. Like I was discovering that, oh, I really have this love for poetry. I really have this love for fashion. I really have this love for this and that. And then around that time, I kind of like came to Nottingham, and I had to like really figure out who I was and try and like have this relationship with my mom. Like I like, even though with my aunt I had a mother-daughter relationship, it was more of like we were mother and daughter, but we were all also like, I don't know, maybe friends in the weird way, because we'd go to like movie nights together and stuff. And then now it was like, do I keep being that person with my mom, or do I don't know, because what is a mother and daughter relationship supposed to like look like? Like it was just weird. And obviously starting, but I went to like an international college, so it wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm surrounded by like white people all the time. I had like other, I had like a mix of different like nations, and I think there were like 4 black people in my class, and they were all like African. So it was, kind of like easier to relate, because we're all international. We are all, obviously I had this extra piece of me like trying to figure out my relationship with my mom, but I wasn't so alienated, because I knew that I would just go back home and, you know, my mom will be there. And even if I'm late, I'm going to find like a hot meal on the table. So I was kind of like different from the others because they were completely new to this country without anyone. I had my mom to fall back onto, if that makes sense. I wasn't completely alone. So I think the biggest struggle for me being in Nottingham was myself and trying to navigate who I am in this, I don't know, this world. But I think also the trouble came when I went to university, because obviously in college we had like this tight-knit family of international people. And then going to uni, like my course, I studied psychology with sociology, and it's mostly white female dominated. So coming from college where I had like, you know, a mixture of people, to going to university where suddenly I'm like the only black person in, you know, in the lecture halls and my seminars, it was like, yeah, this is different, because obviously I couldn't like relate to them or their jokes in a way, so yeah. So in college, obviously, I did a foundation in business law and social science, and then I progressed to Nottingham, trying doing psychology with sociology. But obviously, I took a leave of absence last year, so I'm now back doing my final year. At first, I did sociology because my aunt did it, and she always used to talk about how interesting it was and stuff like that. And then, I don't know, so I kind of like, and then I did them for A-level, so I kind of like was interested in how society is and how people, you know, function. And I think the only reason why I really did study psychology was so that I could, because I have a passion for helping other people. So I thought, well, if I am going to like help others, then I should be able to like understand what it is to be a person. But I think throughout the course, I really understood what it meant to be me, and just trying to like, you know, figure out other people as well. I volunteer when I can, I give back when I can, and yeah, I just love being that friendly face around the block, kind of. So yeah, obviously I think it's always like a problem when you go overseas to say, well, there is like a lot of racism and that, but to actually sit here and say that I have been, you know, treated differently would be a lie. I wouldn't say I've felt welcome. Like, obviously there are times where I haven't felt welcome, but it wasn't like it's just because I couldn't relate to other people and how they are, rather than, oh yeah, I've been, you know, treated differently because I'm black. Kind of, yeah. Oh yeah, I guess it's like, you know, even like, it's just like what I was saying about, you know, being the only like black person in the room. Like sometimes it actually doesn't matter. It's actually when you actually, I don't know, maybe take some time to randomly look around, and then you realize, oh wow, I'm the only black person in this room. And then I guess you start internalizing that, oh yeah. But actually it didn't matter all along, but because you've kind of like brought it to yourself, then that's when it matters. But obviously there are some people who experience, you know, other worse things. But for me, I guess I've been lucky to say that I haven't experienced racism firsthand. If I have, then probably I just brushed it aside and just thought, well, yeah, didn't matter. So I guess I only started knowing like much about like Zimbabwe or like Black history in general after I had moved to the UK, because that's when, you know, you actually celebrate Black History Month, yeah, which is actually pretty cool, because in Zimbabwe we don't have that. And yeah, we only have Africa Day. Yeah, so actually a lot of it about like just Black history in general, I learned it here, and also because I do sociology, so obviously I am, you know, I've dug deeper into racism, into like society, and to like all these other things. Yeah, yeah, but obviously back home, unless maybe you do African history, then maybe you'll learn about it. The pandemic was just, I don't know, I just saw it as a like prolonged time for me to stay in the house, because generally speaking, like I do not go out. Like even if my mom says yes, I'm one of those who say, well, yeah, sorry, my mom says no, kind of. So like I just love being in my own bubble, being in my own space. So I mean, obviously, I guess it has something to do with my character, maybe, I don't know. But so to say that I've been affected by the pandemic would be, I don't know. Yes, there are times where I missed going out, but then it didn't make so much difference because I hardly go out anyway. And besides, I was working during the pandemic as well, so I still got to be a key worker and be at work and see people, even though we had to wear masks. But yeah, so I wasn't stuck in the house, just going out for essential shopping and stuff. Like I am a key worker, so. So at the moment, I'm a mental health support worker. Well, obviously, I started the job recently in February, but obviously during the pandemic, I was like healthcare assistant, so I worked in a care home. It's literally support work. I'm just there to support these people who have mental health complications. So from, just making sure they've cleaned themselves, they've, cleaned their flats, to managing their finances, to making sure that they go for their health appointments, and yeah, just being there for them generally. Well, I love poetry and I love fashion, so I am always, I think, sometimes I completely neglect poetry, but I guess it always comes back to me. And yeah, I guess poetry is the way that I can express myself, but not only myself. I try, sometimes when I write, I'm just not writing for myself. I'm just, I don't know, taking other people's feelings and putting them on paper, if that makes sense. Well, it doesn't really make sense, but all I'm trying to say is, like sometimes my poetry isn't really for me, but it's about like maybe like a friend told me a story, then I can, if it's something that I deeply relate to, then I try to like make a poem out of it so that it can be like a poem for us rather than for myself, if that makes sense. But yeah, sometimes I do essentially write for myself, maybe when I'm having a bad day, on like I just have, like I'm having a sad day, or I feel like I'm depressed, then my notes app is always there to like, get the words written in. When I was living in Zimbabwe, most of the clothes that I wore, there was just either my mom would send to me, or like my aunt would buy for me. So I really never had like my own defined fashion sense. I just tried to like wear what I have in my own way. And then so I think coming to the UK, where I have this free will to go shopping and find the fashion that best describes me, or like find like the clothes that maybe like fit my figure or like how I'm feeling, has been really liberating. As much as I love my country, there aren't as many opportunities for like young people, and people just basically graduate and sit on their degrees, and unless you have connections or you know someone who can get you a job. So in terms of like living here, like I get to work, I get to study, that is something that is rare in Zimbabwe, and most young people my age are just looking for an opportunity to live, which is sad because Zimbabwe is a great country. Like, we are happy people. We just, Yeah, we're just a nation that has been through so much, but I don't know, we just survive. Yeah, but like, I wouldn't say I would go back to Zimbabwe to like settle there permanently, because I know it's patriotic of me to say that I don't want to go back to my country, but like, if I go back to Zimbabwe, then I know that there's nothing for me. It's just another graduate going back home to not have a job, unless obviously I make, like, unless I really know someone who knows someone who's just going to get me where I want to go. You can, yeah, so maybe after graduation I would depend, maybe I'll stay in Nottingham, maybe I'll move to some other city, or I don't know, go to another country. I'm still deciding. But yeah, now with the whole change of like prime ministers, it's just like, well, I mean, what is this going to mean for like immigrants and stuff? Because I'm an immigrant myself, so what does it really mean for like people who don't have like British citizenships, and then they have to depend on visas? What does that mean for me? Because obviously, like, if I want to like base my future in the UK, knowing that the prime minister's changed, what rules or other laws are they going to like implement that could possibly ruin my supposed planned future within the UK? So it's like, yeah, I would love to get my citizenship here, because maybe the UK would be a safe space for me to have a citizenship. So yeah. My hopes for the future, I don't know, probably get my poetry published one day. And yeah, I just really want to help people, whatever that may look like. Yeah, that's it really.